Hello and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to rank every Ark creature beginning with A from best to worst. But just before we get into it, make sure to like and subscribe as it really does help out the channel. In at number 11 is the Oranio. Now this creature is pretty much obsolete, and in my opinion, no one should be taming this thing. It is essentially useless. It has 2 attacks if you were wondering, but I don't know why you would. It's got its standard bite, and then obviously it's got that web shooting ability. It is okay at traveling around the map. It's a bit on the slow side, and its stamina is quite rubbish. I would not recommend it for doing any kind of traveling tasks. And also on top of all of that, its taming method is a really annoying passive tame, which is not desirable at all. If this thing did have a TLC though, where it could climb up walls or shoot webs to get around like the Bloodstalker, this may actually be worth the tame. In at number 10 is the Archeopteryx. This thing is a very odd thing to tame, and usually you will find one of these things in the redwoods. And actually you can only tame these things using chitin. Yes, a very weird taming food. Now, all the Archeopteryx is actually going to do is act as a glider. But since the gliding suit exists now, there is not really a use for one of these things. And also, you can't wield or equip any kind of weapons while you're holding onto the Archeopteryx. So you have to only be gliding. Whereas if you have the glide suit, you can still get out weapons, and it is not an inconvenience to you when you are not gliding. That just simply equips your chest plate, where you have to carry this around everywhere, and it just really does slow your character down. In at number 9 is the first creature on this list that actually has any use at all, and it is the snail. This thing is a pretty annoying tame though. You have to feed this thing sweet vegetable cake, and sweet vegetable cake is definitely a very expensive resource. But if you're on the lookout for cementing paste, these things can actually make cementing paste, or as it's actually called when you will get this, attachina paste. And if you look at the logo here, it just looks the same as cementing paste, and it is a substitute, but it isn't really worth it now that beaver dams exist. In at number 8 is the angler. Now this thing is actually a tame that you may consider taming. It is a bit of a pain though, but it really isn't that difficult overall, and it is definitely an easy tame in the deep sea compared to things like the mosasaurus, the dunkleosteus, and the plesiosaurus. These things are definitely worth the tame, and also they have a very reasonable resource that you can gather from them if you kill one of these things, and that is angler gel. You can put this thing in your torches, and also you can use it to tame mantas. But mantas aren't really worth it, so I wouldn't really recommend taming one of those things. And mantas are pretty much the bane of any Ark player's ocean existence. Do not tame a manta. They are such a pain. The only time that you're really going to come into contact with those things is if you're taming a basilosaurus. And you know, if you tamed a basilosaurus with loads of mantas, it is an absolute pain. But the angler is reasonable for getting around and isn't too bad for caves. In at number 7 is the arthroplura. This is definitely a creature more designed for PvP use than PvE use, as in a PvE scenario, the arthroplura simply isn't a creature that PvE players will tame unless they're trying to tame every Ark creature. But in PvP scenarios, this arthroplura is extremely useful. Firstly, its shape really does work well for any PvP scenario, as it is relatively flat and quite small in the grand scheme of things, so you can stay hidden really easily. And also the colour of the arthroplura makes it blend into the environment quite well. Unless you're on a beach obviously, then whatever creature you are, you're going to be standing right out. But the main ability the arthroplura has for any PvP scenario, as these things can destroy any type of structure. Yes, even tech. And this is a great thing to have if you're trying to raid the alphas on the server and they have a massive tech base. and you don't feel like taming something like a titanosaur to get the job done. Right in at number 6 is the armorgasaurus. This is definitely not a tame for the faint-hearted, and actually overall I can't even remember how this thing is tamed, but I remember watching a Raasclark video where it took him over 24 hours to tame one of these things. And actually I don't really know the use of these things, but I know they are extremely useful. My knowledge is definitely really rough when it comes to creatures that came out after Genesis Part 2, but leave a comment down below what you use the armorgasaurus for. I reckon it is some kind of herbivore, so it probably does gather berries, and also it has seemingly different kind of modes, similarly to the stego, where it has a red glow, a blue glow, and a purple glow. In at number 5 is the astrocetus, and like the armarga again, this is definitely not a tame for the faint-hearted. This thing is an extremely difficult tame, but unlike the armarga, I actually do know how you tame this thing, and it is by shooting literal cannons into its face. But the tech hover skiff definitely does help with this, as if you had to use a Quetzal for this, that might be even more of a pain. But luckily the skiff exists, as it is an absolute godsend for taming the astrocetus. And once tamed, you've got an absolute beast of a creature that has many different camera angles, so you can easily see when people are coming for you, and you can even drop bombs onto the land. This may be a kind of big slow creature, but it can teleport around as well. It is actually reasonably mobile, and this thing definitely does pack a punch. It will deal insane damage. In at number 4 is the allosaurus. We're definitely stepping back in time in the Ark universe here when we come to look at this creature, as this creature is a lot older than the astrocetus, but definitely an Ark tame that is 100% worth taming, especially if you can't shell out for taming a Rex, as you are not a high enough level to unlock the saddle yet. The allosaurus will usually come in packs. It's usually 3. I haven't really seen more. I've occasionally seen a pack of 2, but that might be because one of those creatures has got lost or has died. Either way, the alpha of the pack will have an orange glow, so if you're intending just to tame one allosaurus instead of the whole pack, look for the one with the orange glow, and that is the one you're going to want to go for, as the pack leader is the creature that is the highest level, and obviously the higher the level of the creature, the better stats it has, and the better creature you're going to get after that. Compared to the Rex, the allosaurus is a lot more mobile, and it does have the bleed ability, which I don't really know why the Rex doesn't have it, as creatures like the Carnotaurus and the Allo and the Shadowmane all have this ability, and the Giga has it as well, but sadly it will lose that thing once it is tamed. The Carcharodontosaurus, I'm pretty sure, keeps it though with its Blood Rage ability. On top of all of that, the allosaurus's health is very reasonable as well, and compared to a creature like the Rex, this thing can attack really fast, which is definitely great for bosses, especially when you're not riding the allosaurus, as if you're not riding a creature, it will attack slower than when you're riding on it. I don't really know why that is, but that is just how Ark goes. When you're not riding on a creature, it will attack slower. But I wouldn't really recommend the allosaurus for bosses like the Master Controller on Genesis Part 1, as that is simply too long, and the allosauruses really aren't going to stack up that well against so many Reapers and so many Gigas. But it is definitely a great shout if you're taming. In at number 3 is the Argy. This is yet again another old Ark creature, but it is 100% worth your time and effort. These things are absolutely insane and are 100% worth it, and the reasons why they are so worth it is because these things are great metal harvesters or metal runners, because they don't actually harvest the metal. They'll just get you from A to B right there and carry all of the resources back to your base, unlike a creature such as the Pteranodon, where it simply cannot hold all of the weight. Also on top of that, the RG saddle is a portable smithy, which is really nice, and it has a special ability. When eating dead corpses, it will heal up really quickly, which some other creatures, especially herbivores, do not have. But it can definitely be a pain just sitting there and feeding your creature loads and loads of meats to heal it up. It is really great that when you eat a dead body on the RG, it will heal passively for I think a period of 30 seconds, and it really is OP. That health will absolutely skyrocket, and that also is why when you're killing things, be aware of RGs above, as they will swoop down and eat that corpse and even kill you or whatever you're doing. In at number 2 is the Circus. Now yet again, my knowledge is pretty limited with this creature, but I know this thing really does pack a punch, and when I was just playing around with it, I can already tell this is a creature that in future I want to use in Ark. This thing is really mobile and does an insane amount of damage, and that kick there might be similar to the Equus where it deals torpor, but I don't completely know on that. Yet again, yes, I'm not the most knowledgeable, but also this thing's jump is really overpowered. This thing can easily scale most reasonably steep surfaces. It's not going to go up cliffs or anything, but it is definitely reasonable in the travel factor. Also, it does have a turret on its saddle. Me being pretty stupid, I didn't actually find a way to activate this, but I've seen it being activated and I know it's OP. And finally, in at number 1 is the Astrodelphis. Not to be confused with the astrocetus. They are quite similar, one being space whale, this being space dolphin, but they are definitely very different creatures. Compared to the astrocetus, the Astrodelphis is really fast. Yes, the astrocetus can still get around very well, but the Astrodelphis is just so much faster and so much more mobile, and you can do all kind of tricks with these things. You can flip sideways, which I forgot to do. I did it at some point in my Genesis Part 2 playthrough when I did that absolutely ages ago, but I did still manage to get this thing to flip, and it is just really nice to control this thing. Also, on top of that, this thing does a very reasonable amount of damage, and you can shoot lasers right from its saddle, but obviously this is going to use element. Also, for its taming method, you're going to need element as well. Pretty sure it's element. It might be a different resource, but I'm going to go on element for this one. You essentially passive feed it element, and then at some point you pet it, and then you passive feed it element, and then you will eventually tame this thing. And definitely sometimes these things can be very aggressive in packs, and their knockback can be pretty annoying, but make sure to beware for void worms as well, as they can be an absolute Astrodelphis killer. But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and I hope you enjoyed this new style of content, if you do call it that. Comment your top creatures beginning with A in the comments down below, and I will see you all later. Bye.